Okay, so we're ready.
Yeah, we're ready.
How do we start? Do we say hello?
Just say our names and start.
Oh yeah, that! It's been so long I forgot what we're doing.
Right? I had to go back and listen to the first 5 minutes of our
We're so good at this. Happy 1-year anniversary to us.
Hi everyone, Anisa here once again, and this month we've got another extra long yak for you. This is part 1 of 2. In this segment we talk about some industry news, including departures, comebacks, and a certain streaming service, which leads us to a tangent about how Netflix is changing the K-drama landscape, our own origin story, and a certain K-pop boy band, which is non-Korean, that has been in the news recently, something different for us. We also talk about currently airing dramas we've sampled, such as Mr. Sunshine and 30 But 17. And now, here's the yak. Enjoy!
Hi everyone, this is Saya.
This is Anisa.
And this is Paroma.
And it's been a really long time since we've last talked to each other, somehow, weirdly, so...
And we've completely forgotten how to do podcasts. So.
I think we've forgotten how to talk, well, at least I have.
Yes, the heat is melting our brains, and that's our story.
Basically, anyone who's been asking me, how are you doing in the last month, I'm like, so normally, imagine I'm a nice raw egg. Right now, I'm a fried egg. That's what my brain is like. So...
This is so weird. I'm the one who lives in the tropics and I'm drowning in monsoon right now. It's raining every day and like my street is so low, it floods occasionally. So yeah, you guys keep talking about the heat and I'm like, it's windy and really rainy. I'm soggy all the time.
I have to say, when I'm talking about the heat to you guys, I feel really guilty because it's like both of you are in hotter climes than I am. And here I am just like completely unable to function, lying face down on the floor in the darkest corner I can find. And, just struggling to survive.
No, it's okay. I am like lucky to have air conditioning in most places I go. So even though it's really hot, like I don't really have to feel it that much.
Wait till global warming gets to you, Anisa.
Yeah, then the apocalypse will come and we'll be like scavenging in the ruins of civilization and we'll be burning and yeah.
On that very positive note, let's take a look back over what's been happening in the last month in K-drama land. Not a lot has been happening. July was so eventful. We're looking at our sort of itinerary for August and it's like strangely bare. So, what happened literally the day after we recorded our last yak was the Kim Hyun-joon casting news. Yeah. Instant ugh. So, he's been cast in a drama, and it's a fantasy romance of all the kinds of dramas. That's a really quick comeback that nobody's happy about.
Oh, so I don't know. Some people don't seem to mind.
Yeah.
The Twitter replies to this announced, like I think it was Soompi that announced it, and I looked at the Twitter replies, and so many people were like, "Oh my gosh, finally, Oppa!" And I'm like, vomiting in my mouth, like what?
Exactly.
Maybe they don't read the news.
No, they do. They just refuse to believe it. So many people, they knew. They just thought that he was being unfairly accused of things, and of course the woman must be lying. It's just yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of she's a gold digger, she's lying, she's trying to ruin her reputation, she's a bitter woman who's mad that he... I mean, there's a lot of...
Yeah, there was a lot of sympathy for the guy. Anyway.
That's, and
no surprise to everyone.
Again?
Yep, KBS. It's their cable channel, KBSW. So.
Yeah. They're sure building up a reputation for rehabilitating the undesirables.
Yeah.
Well, somebody's got to, public service. As
long as they're dudes. As long as they're dudes.
True.
Yeah, exactly. As long as they're dudes.
Well.
So, anything happy happens?
Well, it's not really happy, but it's not ugh. So, second piece of news is that Jang has enlisted for he was meant to enlist for military service, but he's enlisted in public service due to a bipolar diagnosis. Standard K-Nuts backlash saying he's making it up, and look at him trying to wiggle out of doing active duty.
But
Made me a bit
can't actually
sad.
make it up, right? Like it's the military that does the diagnosis. It's not like they're just going to believe anybody who comes in with like a doctor's note.
Well, yeah, I mean, they do their own medicals, isn't it? So you have to pass their
Yeah.
medicals. And part of the reason why Koala's Playground reports that part of the reason why he's gone a bit later than his same age peers is because of the repeated medicals. And, you know, he's still serving according to his
Yeah.
capability. So I wish people would give them a break.
And I can actually believe it with this particular actor.
Yeah,
with
same here. I don't want to say something like, you know, assuming anything, but yeah, like you say, the
yeah.
diagnosis is believable for, you know, if you've seen him and heard him.
And if you've been following his career. Yeah.
And he's had a really hard time just generally over the last few years. Like, you can see it. It does show.
Yeah.
So I just want him to be, you know, healthy and
Yeah.
well and not have to, you know, justify his medical condition to other people.
Yeah. It's just one of those things that it's always going to be, no one's ever going to believe you, you know, if you try to get out of it. Or even if you have a legitimate reason. Like, look what Yuan had to go through.
And he had an actual tumor as well, right?
Yeah, he had like a benign bone tumor, but people just wouldn't leave him alone.
And Soinguk as well.
Yeah.
He had an actual injury, didn't he? Was it an injury when he was serving?
I think he got injured and had to leave early. Is that what happened?
I think so.
But like, honestly, if you think about it like logically, why would you, in this climate, considering how much backlash you're sure to get, like why would you even do that? Like if you didn't have to, you know? I can understand like 10 or 15 years ago when people could actually get away with it, but nowadays, as a celebrity, you can't really get away with it.
That, and he's already had quite a hard time with his reputation in general.
Yeah.
So it doesn't make sense that he or his managers or agents would try to get him out of that. It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Oh,
Sorry, go
yeah, I
ahead.
looked it up. So he was sent back early because he had like a cartilage fracture in his left ankle, and then he was diagnosed with a joint disorder.
That's right.
There are cartilage, there are cracks that form in his cartilage and underlying bone. So,
ouch.
Yeah.
Very ouch.
But yeah, I do remember him getting a lot of flack too.
I was just gonna say, I think there's always just an element of jealousy when there's a perceived advantage or privilege, especially when it's by famous people, that people are always just going to be like, well, I had to go, or my husband had to go, or my son or my brother had to go, and like he wasn't able to get out of it, so like how come you get to get out of it just because you're famous? Like not understanding.
It's also been drummed into us that people in privileged positions do take advantage of their position to sort of escape military. Like there have been so many dramas where there have been, you know, like those arcs where the hero, the sort of irresponsible hero escapes military service by pretending that he's got some kind of a thing. That's an actual arc that's being used in dramas. So
yeah, and I mean to be fair, like I'm sure the sons of chaebols and stuff get out of it all the time with no repercussions.
I feel like with celebrities
I don't think
it's a bit
K-pop
harder.
Stars are not the ones that we need to be going after for that, you know.
Yeah. And also, it's always the mental. It's always the mental disease diagnosis that gets the worst kind of flack. Like you must be making it up. Is that even a thing?
That's right.
So,
yeah, there's the additional stigma of that. Yeah. So.
Okay. So.
So come back soon, Geun-seok. We'll wait for you.
Yeah.
Hopefully in a better project.
Yeah.
So the next one is really weird, and it's that you come across the weirdest things. Like you're just randomly reading something, and this is it's slightly old news. It's from last September, but apparently Jun-ki was blacklisted among other people in the entertainment industry by the previous conservative government for apparent left leanings. And that limited the work and opportunities that he's had for the last few years. So, and this, the article I read is on the Inquisitor. You can find the report in various other places, but it's a very strange, it's just really weird. Who knew?
So I remember when this story came out last year, but is this like there's been new names added to the list that they just found out? Because at that time I don't remember them mentioning Jun-ki. So I guess they've found out more because of the investigation that's ongoing.
Most of the names are directors, writers, and some I think are theatre actors. The only
Few actors,
the only drama actor name that I recognize is Lee Jun-ki's.
So I remember. Sorry, go ahead, Paroma.
Yeah, I'm sorry. When they say left-leaning in Korea, does that mean left-leaning as in communist left-leaning or as in liberal left-leaning? Because it can mean.
Well, it's kind of funny actually because you can't really tell because it's in like quote marks, and also it's one of the Inquisitor articles says that they think that some fans have speculated, international fans have speculated that one of the reasons might be because of his role in the movie May 18th, which was about the Gwangju democratization movement, and he played one of the rebels. And another speculation, and I'm quoting from the article now, is that Lee Jun-ki reacted to Lee Myung-bak's support of importing beef from the US in 2008. And it was reported that importing... I was like, this is just weird. Like, how do you get on this list? Nobody knows.
Yeah, it seems that from the politics that I've followed very sparsely in Korea, it seems that their right and left, conservative and liberal is sort of what we also say when we say those things, in terms of like that the conservative is more like very Christian, I almost feel like there's a lot of similarities with American politics. Well, there's also a lot of dissimilarities, but like they're more about, you know, policing women's bodies. There's more of like a religious conservatism maybe. They're like the children of dictators and stuff like that. Like Park Geun-hye, she was a child of a former dictator. Yeah. Whereas the left, I mean, the other party that Moon Jae-in is from, the current president, seems to be more interested in like promoting the rights of minorities and having more social welfare programs. So like to me, that seems to have a lot of similarities with what I think of as right and left. But right and left is also such a stupid way of thinking about politics that I'm just fed up with.
Somebody frame that.
Yeah, I mean, right now in this country, people are losing it over right and left to the point that it's lost all meaning. But to get back to like the mad cow disease thing, I remember when this came out last year because I really I think you guys have not watched Scandal, right? But Kim Gyuri was probably my favorite performance in that, other than Kim Jae-won. Actually, they were all so good. But with her, I was like, this woman has more acting talent in her pinky finger than many of the like actresses from her generation that get like these huge leading roles and like these really big, expensive miniseries dramas. And she's nowhere. Like, she should have had such an amazing career. Like, why don't I ever see her? And then this news came out like a year later, and I was like, oh, okay.
Oh, right, yeah, she's on the blacklist as well.
She's on the blacklist, yeah. And for her, the only reason they gave was because she spoke out against the ban on beef coming from America back in 2008, which is also, like, I agree, so weird.
So, okay, cool. On from weird news onto... so this is interesting, and I didn't know this until I read this article. So it's from a financial magazine, I think, Barron's or something. Anyway, so Korea as a country, so South Korea's sovereign wealth fund, they've bought $30 million of Netflix stock. Which is it's interesting. Like, the country itself has bought this, so they're investing in Netflix. And Netflix has slightly older news from about January 2017, so it's quite old. They've focused their expansion in Southeast Asia. Southeast Asia? Which one is it? Southeast
Asia, because there have been a lot of new, I'll talk about it later in the episode, but there have been a couple of new Netflix Indian TV shows that have been really well received, and they've been doing it in quite a number of South and Eastern Asian countries with a lot of success.
So I think they've kind of set up the Southeastern Asia base from Korea to sort of radiate out to everywhere else.
It's a developing form of storytelling, but more and more producers and directors are getting on board, and it's working out really well for India at least.
Interesting.
I feel like it's working out for Korea as well because don't forget that they've lost pretty much a massive income stream with escalating hostilities with China over the THAAD stuff. So they have needed to look elsewhere, and Netflix is like the goose that lays the golden egg for them right now. I think because their money is coming from the international revenue is coming from, I guess, pretty much Netflix right now. I mean, that's a big market to replace when you think of how much was coming in from China.
You also have like other screening places, right? Like Viki and Rama Fever.
Yeah, and there's this Cocoa, which has kind of been.
Yeah, it's new, but it's also it's spreading like wildfire. They're taking up new media all the time. They came out of nowhere.
Cocoa is what is it called? A conglomeration. I'm probably getting the terminology wrong, but it's a partnership between the three public broadcast channels, and it's only available in the US. Cocoa has also partnered with Viki. So a lot of their content can be streamed through Viki, but it's not available anywhere except the US and North America, I think in general, Canada and the US. Like you can't get any Cocoa content here.
I know a lot of people have been complaining about how Netflix isn't airing dramas as soon as they are released. Like they have to wait, like there's a week's lag or like a 10-day lag between the airing date and when Netflix puts it out. And that's true. That was true, especially of the season before this one. Just like 3-4 months ago, whatever Netflix was releasing was getting a lag. But right now, at least the two Chinese dramas, the Chinese dramas that I'm seeing, a few of the Korean dramas that have been released on Netflix, they are pretty much on schedule. As soon as they air in Korea, they're being released in my country at least. And I realized that US actually has a staggered release date. Like I see it on Netflix before Anisa would, for instance. I realized I don't know what, and it has to be. What do you call that? That ownership thing, like where you
licensing?
Licensing. Thanks. It has to be an overseas licensing thing because after all, they're competing with Drama Fever and Viki, which also target the same US.
Sorry, sorry for just saying.
No, go on. This is just I'm asking.
See, I have very strong feelings about this. What Netflix does is they get exclusive rights to dramas. If Netflix has it, no one else does. Which, from a business point of view, it makes sense. I mean, they've put a lot of money into it and everything. But then what they do is they withhold that drama for like until it finishes, and then they'll drop it like in one go. Most of the
time. So I have something to say as the one who lives in the US. So with no, it's fine. It's fine. No, that's cool. Like I remember when Pretty Nuna was airing, and also Forest of Secrets, which they licensed at Stranger, like those two shows, and I don't know about any other ones, but especially those two, they were airing pretty much concurrently with the Korean airtime, or if there was a lag, there wasn't much of a lag, and like everywhere else except I think the US and maybe Canada. And we had to wait until after the drama was complete, and then like you can binge watch it, which was kind of made me mad. This time,
but what about a drama like Korean Odyssey? They were just delaying that. They were delaying the release of the episodes.
Was that on Netflix?
So I still haven't seen that on
I'm pretty sure that's on Viki as well. Hold on, let me just check.
Yeah, so
I was watching it there.
And also,
it can't be an exclusive thing. Yeah.
Okay, but the first time that I've seen a Korean drama actually airing as it airs on Netflix is with Mr. Sunshine.
Yeah, that's literally the first one.
Yeah.
Where you have like next day subs.
The first Chinese drama that I'm seeing Netflix do as it's being aired is Meteor Garden, the 2018 adaptation. They are subbing it and they're putting it up almost as soon as it airs in China. So
I've been seeing that too, the Meteor Garden. But before this, the only dramas that I'd seen airing simultaneously as they were airing on their actual TV channels were a couple of Japanese shows that you couldn't find anywhere else.
Okay. So I think they're trying, I mean, we are ragging on Netflix a lot about how they're delaying it, but I think they're trying to figure this shit out. They tried to do the whole thing about where they withhold the episodes and they drop them together, and it really doesn't work for international East Asian drama watching crowd. And I think they figured that out. So they're trying their best to.
But they don't need to figure it out. There's a huge fandom out there that they can access really easily. Everyone, it's very easy to find out what the temperature of the water is.
Yeah, but they're trying something new because you have to understand a lot of us do binge watch. Like when I see something that I like, but I know I don't have the time or the mental capacity to keep watching every week, I will stop myself from watching it and wait till it finishes airing and then watch it together. So there is a chunk of audience who likes doing it. I'm assuming because Netflix usually does do the whole thing where they drop all the episodes together, they thought maybe their way of doing things would be better.
But you see,
And again, I realized
this is part of my problem with Netflix is that it doesn't respect.
Model.
Yeah, it is, but it doesn't respect the K-drama viewer experience because the thing is, K-dramas by Netflix are not they are not aiming at existing K-drama watchers. They never were. They are trying to market this to the average Netflix audience. So yeah, they don't need to understand how K-drama viewers watch K-dramas, which is live or as close to live as you can get, and the whole exclusivity thing, at one point when we were watching, I think, Pretty Nuna, and we were like, thank God at least there are subs. But then you realize, hold on, the reason that no one else has this drama is because Netflix has monopolized it. Yeah, because they've got monopolies on dramas, and then they hold them back. So you're like, you don't have options. They've reduced our options, and that's part of the reason that I have a problem with that. And their sub-qualities are the lowest quality I've ever seen among all of the different providers.
No, that I do agree with. Like even when Drama Fever and Wiki do exactly the same thing, they exclusively license the dramas. They do have amazing subs. Like they are the go-to subs.
And they give it to you right away.
Yeah.
If you want it for free, you might have to wait.
Good about that.
Yeah, I mean that's what I'm saying. There are existing there's an existing viewership out there that you can see how they work. And the thing with Drama Fever or Viki or whatever is that if you're not paying for it, you might have to wait a bit. But at the most, at the most until the show ends. And sometimes it might be like on a 1 week or 2 week delay. But you can pay for a premium to watch that immediately. Yeah. But yeah, with Netflix you just don't have options, and I hate as a viewer not having options.
Yeah, and to your point about them not respecting the Korean drama viewership, like the fan community, I was reading that article about their expansion into Korea and into Asia, and they were saying, the Korean dramas really travel well, and that's why they understand how big of a fandom it has in China and Southeast Asia and stuff. I don't think they really understand anything about the English-speaking K-drama viewing audience, because I think a lot of the reporting even about it's weird. It's like they don't understand who the fans are over here and how they watch the dramas. They just figure, well, they're Americans, so they're used to binge watching everything. So if we just drop it all at once, like we did Stranger Things, Americans love that. That's what it's a very not very nuanced way of clearly they haven't really done much research, or maybe they are starting to do some more research, or maybe they've had people complaining, which is maybe why they've started this dropping it once a week as it airs with Mr. Sunshine. I don't know.
And the other thing with Mr. Sunshine is because it was fully pre-produced, they've had time to sort of work on the subtitles and things. Because the other thing I noticed in Netflix shows is that it looks like one person works on the subs. That does take time. Maybe they need to do what all the other providers do, is have group subbers. Everyone does something, it gets done really quickly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But I mean, it's easy to have a whole team when it's fans,
and they can afford it. Yeah, but the thing is, Netflix can afford to pay a group of translators, so there's no excuse. Why are they doing it like they're a 3-man operation?
I don't know. Yeah, apparently my friend was telling me that you can get a job subbing Korean subs, but she was like, you have to be a native Korean speaker for them to hire you.
Yeah.
So I don't know about that. That is. Maybe if you're a native Korean speaker, your English might not be that good. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, like we talked about when we were watching Pretty Nuna, they make a lot of mistakes in their subs.
Yeah.
It's been getting better actually because I've been what have I been watching? Mr. Sunshine. The subs are a lot better in that, but then that was a different translator as well. So I've been noting the names.
It has better subtitles.
So
for
I guess
sure. I didn't really have complaints. Yeah.
But you know what really bothers me about the Netflix subtitles is the names. The way they reverse the order of the name. It makes my brain hurt.
Yeah, which is why I don't think it's a native subtitler doing that, because they would be more clued in into the cultural context.
That might just be their chosen convention. They might have just said, "Let's change the names around." So
maybe that's just the rule that they've decided.
Because it's something I don't know if you noticed that Koreans do when they meet Western people. When Koreans meet Western people, they introduce themselves in that Western order. So that might just be, I get why they're doing it, but I wish they wouldn't.
Yeah.
Right, and like if you've decided to spend 16 hours watching a show made in a different language with English subtitles, I think you can take the time to figure out that they reverse the name order,
or just
different from what you're used to.
Right, and put a sentence at the beginning of the thing he's saying, look, names are in this order. It's really easy. Translators notes.
Yeah, but
Vicky does them all the time.
Our preference for getting the name order right, like wanting it to be what it is in Korea, is not necessarily what most of the international audience prefers. They're used to having Koreans of their own country put the last name last.
That's not the reason that I prefer it, though. The reason that I want it the right way around is because I'm hearing one thing and I'm reading another, and it makes my brain kind of. So, like, I have.
But then you realize you're actually like a minority in the international viewership. Most people don't register.
No, do you know what? It's not true because do you remember? Neither of you watched this, but when Black was airing, for example, so many people came on. Oh, did you? Oh, okay. Well, a lot of people who were watching K-dramas for the first time. Then they actually appeared in various fan forums, and they would ask questions like, "Look, I can hear this, but on the screen it says this, and I know that's not what they're saying." So that question was not asked once; it was asked so many times. Like Song Seung-un, he would call Goara. He called her Gomtakchi the whole time, which what of gum, and they never translated that. They always had that written as like Haram, which was her name. And
I hate when they do that, when they just erase like nicknames and stuff.
I mean, it was
such an important part of the character's relationship.
They were doing that during Jealousy Incarnate. The kid with that, I forget what her name was, but they kept translating it to Red. I think Drama Fever was doing that. Yeah, Palgang. And that was so annoying.
It is. It's
like, use
really
Scarlet
irritating.
if you have to. But
that discussion over Balgang is why me and Saya became friends. That's how we became friends.
I don't even remember
because there was a big discussion on online about is it okay to translate someone's name? And a bunch of us were like, no, that's her name. You don't need to translate it. And then I think on the chat I was like, my name is Arabic, and Saya was like, what's your name? Where are you from? Are you Arab? I was like, no, South Asian. And
I was like, oh my god, me too.
Yeah, and then we bonded.
And then we were friends forever.
Yes. That's our origin story. So we owe a lot to Jealousy Incarnate. And then she introduced me to you, so the rest is history.
I don't actually remember exactly how Sai and I started talking. I know it was because of a book. It was because of Serafina.
It was Serafina. Yeah. Amazon reviews. That review is still there.
Yeah, but why were we talking? Why did we start? I don't actually remember.
You said that Rachel Hartman, who wrote Serafina, she had posted a link to my review on her blog. And I found that book really amazing, and I emailed her and I was like, your book is amazing. I wrote a review, and it was one of her earliest reviews as well. like maybe one of her very earliest reviews.
Oh.
So then you told me afterwards that you clicked on that, and then you left a comment under my review, and then we exchanged a few comments and replies, and then we took it off Amazon, and that was it.
Yeah, right. Huh.
That's such a weird origin story, that one.
So basically, fandom can be really horrible, as we've seen, but it also gives us our greatest friends, so we still love it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. But we've moved so far away from dragon.
Yeah, do we have any more news stories?
No, I think that's it. Although I did want to add one more thing about the whole Netflix thing, is that last month we looked forward to Life, right? And I was so looking forward to, I was so stoked. I'm desperate to watch it. And hello,
Yeah.
Netflix. There's no Life. I don't know when we're going to get it. And I was like, is it
not
going to be on a
available
week's
for me
delay?
either.
It's not even on a
Did they-
week's delay, so, you know, I don't know. We're probably going to get it, like, I don't know, after it finishes airing or something. But it kills your excitement, you know. You get really, you're full of anticipation for a drama. You know, we follow the news. We know what's coming up in Dramaland, so you expect it to drop at a particular time, and you're like, well, the Raws are there. You can watch Raw versions, but there's only so much you can get out of a Raw, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm disappointed.
Yeah, and especially with this writer, I mean, it's the Forest of Secrets writer. You know that the dialogue is going to be like with 5 layers to every sentence. Like you need good subs to be able to understand and enjoy and appreciate the nuances of the writing.
Is Life
So-
pre-produced or is it live shooting?
I don't know, but they've had planned for a few months, so they must have at least started like early and done half of it. I can't imagine this cast, I mean this production team rushing anything. Oh,
That
did you
might
want
be
to talk
to do
about Kingdom?
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. I did want to talk about Kingdom. So Netflix again. It's because the Netflix news is so broad that yeah.
Yeah.
So Netflix have already ordered a second season of Kingdom, which, you know, the first season hasn't even released yet. So I think we can expect big things. I'm pretty excited. And the whole production crew and everyone, they've all been signed back on. I think, is there going to be a different director? I'm not 100%. I'm not 100% sure. But yeah, second season of that is also to be expected.
I think the director of the first one wasn't available to direct this one, but he's going to be like in a supervisory role.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, the writer, Kim and he wanted him to be on the project, but he wasn't able to. And I think also the article that you sent was saying that it's a Variety article. That she was approached first by Netflix because they tend to approach writers first before directors, interestingly. Which is, I mean, I can agree with that decision. And she's amazing. I'm like so excited for this, except I don't like zombies. So I don't know.
This is going to be the
That's
first
the
time
only
I
thing I'm just
subject
like,
myself to zombies. Oh, the other thing I found interesting in that Variety article as well, actually, was that I mean, I've trash talked Netflix a lot right now, but they what Kimini, the writer, has said about Netflix is that that she's gotten basically complete freedom to write exactly what she wants, and that normally when you write, you know, when you're writing for a Korean audience, that there's a lot of sort of regulatory stuff and things you can't say and things you have to be careful of.
Yeah, the director was saying... Sorry, go ahead.
Well, yeah, no, you go ahead. I'm done with that.
Yeah, the director was saying, like, they didn't give them any notes, except, like, you have to stay within this budget, which ended up exceeding the budget anyway. It was like we had to pay a penalty for that, which I thought was really, really funny. Like, it was supposed to be 8 episodes, and it turned out to be 6 because they went over budget.
Oh, no.
Which is not that surprising to me. But he was saying, yeah, it was really different because nobody was, like, sending us notes the way we get the broadcasting of like what we had to do or anything. And I remember when I was reviewing Okja and I was reading the interviews with like Bong Joon-ho and stuff, who's the director of Okja, he was saying the same thing, that like it was really nice to have that creative freedom that they basically just give you the money and are like, make your art, and like that's something that American
So they
creative also
respect
said.
the creators. I guess we should be glad for that.
They do, yeah. So
Even
I mean,
if they don't respect the viewers.
yeah, no, I have mixed feelings about Netflix for all the reasons that we've said, but that's one thing that they consistently have done is they give them the money and they're like, okay, make what you want to make, and they have been giving more work to people of color and women, and like there's stuff that's come out on Netflix that's like really bad, but there's also stuff that's come out on Netflix that I feel like never would have gotten made through the traditional studio system. So, pros and cons.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So basically, like you said, they are figuring it out.
Yeah.
Exactly. Give them time, guys. Right now, I'm super pro Netflix, even though they're like.
I think it's because we're so
taking so much
impatient.
money
We want
from
our
me.
dramas right now. Give it to us now.
And
I'm
it's
just
also,
super
yeah.
grateful that they got into this region at all. Like, I mean, yeah, Amazon is doing it. And I'm talking specifically about India right now because, hey, hold on, I'm chewing my biscuit and it's like full in my mouth. Give me a second.
Don't choke. There's no one to do Heimlich.
I have my dog, okay? He can
That would be
run
a
around
first.
in circles.
So I didn't realize that your dog was a super dog, but that's pretty cool.
He knows how to jump up and down my back. So yeah, that
That's a
helps.
very good
Okay,
skill.
sorry. They entered Indian market and they've been producing. It's just that I'm so grateful that they are in these regions, and it's not just Indian market. It's also so many other countries. They're putting in money in stories that would never have otherwise been told because the countries themselves might not have had the money or the vision to produce those stories, and the writers there, the directors there might not have been able to tell those stories, and those stories have an international viewership. It's not like those like Sacred Games you can watch from any part of the world. It's not something that you can solely watch in India. And again, I'm not saying it's such an amazing drama. I mean, it's got good reviews and stuff, but there are issues with it too. But my point is that writers here are getting exposure. Writers in Korea are getting, as you said, freedom to tell the story that they want to tell without, the conventions of that region's broadcast system kind of pressuring them to stay in a single mold. So I am just super happy that they're here and I'm willing to give them a chance, man.
And like
let them
what
figure
I think something that they. Sorry, did you want to go
Just
ahead
one
first?
thing, like, and actually from that perspective, from the Hallyu perspective, where the Korean government has an actual intentional program to deliver Korean culture to an international stage, it makes sense that they've made that, that monetary investment and that they've put a lot of money in there because, as you say, it reaches literally every corner of the earth where there is Netflix.
Yeah, and sort of related to that, what both of you were saying is like they kind of figured out early in the streaming wars that if they, rather than paying all this money constantly to license other people's content, it's easier and better and more worth their money to just make their own stuff. And then they just own it outright and they can just and then they don't have to worry about like what country their licensing works for, and they could just air it internationally. So they're kind of creating this international audience that's all kind of watching the same thing rather than like, with the licensing, everyone's kind of having a different experience on Netflix. Like I remember when I lived in Canada, there was almost nothing available on Canadian Netflix then. And then I would come visit my parents. I was like, oh my gosh, you have so much stuff that you can watch here. I'm jealous. So that's smart. And they figured it out pretty early. So the other thing that I was going to say is the thing that I think part of the reservations on the part of K-drama fans is also that this was kind of our own thing. And it was a special thing that not everybody knew about. And we have this kind of thing of like where we want other people to be fans of this thing that we love, but we also feel really protective because it's special and it's been very much like fan driven. Like I remember when Drama Fever came out too, it was this feeling of that, like they did take
They took out
fan
a lot
subs.
of the old sites out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, and initially they said we'll pay you for them, and then they just like took them, and they didn't. I think there was some. I don't want to say anything, but like I do remember there being people who were a little bit upset about their business practices in the beginning, and I think they've kind of figured that out or whatever. But it's always that thing of like when you have this really fan-driven effort, because in the beginning it was all fans doing the subs and doing the all of that. Like there was no way to actually get it without fans like sitting there and just donating their time and creating these subs. And then like these companies came in that are making money, and now you have this gigantic and now you have Netflix, which is basically like the most gigantic streaming service in the world, and it has billions of dollars, and it's like this feeling of like, well, this was our own little thing, and now you have this huge corporation that wants to make money off it, so of course you're going to feel kind of a little weird about it, I think that's part of it as well. Oh, before we move on from news, do you guys want to talk about this story? I know it's not drama related, but it's like this group of white boys that formed a K-pop band. Did you guys hear about this?
No.
Do you want to talk about this, or is this like a can of worms that you don't want to open on here?
No, I want to know
I haven't even heard
I
about this.
haven't heard
Yeah,
about this.
absolutely want to know about it.
You haven't heard about it? Oh, okay. Okay, so a few days ago there was an article on, I think, Vice, and it was like the world's first all-white or mostly white, like Korean pop band. and I remember this group was actually, I remember hearing about it 2 years ago, and it was like this Korean American student, like these 3 Korean American female students at Columbia created this band as an experiment to see whether they could create a K-pop band without any Korean people in it. And it was, I think it was their thesis project. So now, like, it was initially a thesis project, and she said she was trying to figure out, like, what it means about masculinity and about race and all of that stuff. But now they're actually, like, a legit band that has put out an album, and they're, like, they all moved to Korea. They're all, like, learning Korean, and they have performances, and they have, like a tiny little fandom, very tiny. Yeah, it's weird. They live in a little, like the K-pop, like so like where they have like this little like dorm that they all live together, and there's 4 of them. 3 of them are.
Yeah, one of them looks like Nick Carter. I'm just looking at Nick Carter from his heyday.
Yeah, they're
Not
very
Nick Carter.
Backstreet Boys aesthetic, the way they look. But 3 of them are white. One is half white, half Japanese. Which I'm very curious about his feelings about all this. But I was looking at pictures from before, and they had 2 black members who are now.
Yeah, where have they gone? I'm seeing pictures.
No mention of where they've gone. The piece, it was actually like a video documentary that was like 10 minutes long or something. It was interesting, but they didn't. But the interviewer doesn't ask like what happened to those members and how come you were only left with the white members, which I feel like that was an important question to ask. And the other thing is like a lot of people are saying, oh, it's not. Like the person who actually kind of spearheaded this whole thing, I think her name is Bora Kim, she was saying it's not about what race they are, it's that they're singing in Korean and they're following the convention. And she was saying that K-pop isn't something that came from Korea anyway. It's like it's something that took all the American pop conventions and kind of melded them, and they're singing in Korean, but it's just pop music. And like I can agree with that. But
I don't see the argument that's bullshit argument, because pop culture.
I like how Pete just says it how it is.
No, just listen. This is what she was saying. I really agree with her, but I'm just saying, like, that's what she said.
It doesn't matter which part of the world you are in. Like, I have, again, I'm sorry, I'm coming back to my own country. There is the segment of the musical singers, okay, whatever, from the western part of my country, and they have they are heavily influenced by hip hop. So these are Punjabi singers. They hail from the state of Punjab, and they meld their folk music with hip hop. And again, it is appropriation in a way, but it's also cultural melding.
That said, I don't think that Korean hip hop doesn't have a problem, because they kind of do have a cultural appropriation thing.
They do. I was gonna.
Where they are willing to use all of those elements of black identity, and like absorb it and display it and own it, but treat black people like the actual owners of that culture.
Oh yeah, they're completely like they can be very
Like
racist.
that's not okay, honestly. I mean, I have
It's
to say,
not okay. The appropriation is never okay. But you still can't throw out that entire industry's effort and say it
I'm
doesn't
not
belong.
saying that
You
they
know?
haven't legitimately made good, music that is their own and everything. I just think that there's a difference between. Actually, I'm preaching to the choir here. I know both of you agree with the point that I'm about to make. But there's a difference between sort of paying like homage to another culture and just ripping it off. Like
Yeah, and
exchange is different to appropriation.
and I think part of what this group is doing, regardless of whatever, because the interviewer asked her, don't you think that it's like, don't you think about the fact that you've taken somebody who were part of the majority and put them into a situation where they've now become the minority? And she was like, yeah, that's the whole point. And then that was it. Like, there was no other discussion on that. I was like, what do you mean that was the whole point? Like, and then they're taking advantage, consciously or unconsciously, of the fact that this group presents as being 4 white guys who speak Korean, and they're definitely benefiting from the advantage that gives them both internationally and in Korea. And there was no discussion of the fact that they just kind of, because I have my issues with the way that the K-pop industry kind of puts these young kids into these training programs for years, and then a lot of times they just never debut, and some of them to take them like 6 years to debut or 7 years, and they're just like, they don't go to college. They're just like they waste so much time. A lot of them never. Yeah, well, the slave contracts have been outlawed, but they're still not amazing contracts. Like, they're not great even now. And then a lot of them just don't debut and they quit and they leave, and then they just like have nothing to show for all those years that they just basically gave some company because they were sold a dream that was not realistically possible. And so like that system has a lot of issues with it. But I can understand people who are like, well, you guys just kind of made this group and you took advantage of this like gimmick and this international popularity or whatever, and you just kind of came in and now you're like able to go on all these TV shows and stuff where like people who grow up here and are trying to like go through the system. And also there are people who are actually Korean, who are not ethnically Korean, who try to break through into the K-pop industry and who face a lot of racism and stuff because they're not white.
Advantage.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like there's, like look at what Yoon-mi has had to deal with throughout her career. Like she's Korean. She grew up, like, her dad was American, but like she didn't grow up around him. Her mom raised her, and she's faced like so much racism throughout her career. She's half black and half Korean, just for people who don't know. And she's married to Tiger JK, and they have a son, and like even their son gets racist like it's just so I mean, to kind of pretend like none of that exists, and you're just like, no, it's just like this cultural exchange, and we're doing it. Like, if it's an experiment, like, it should have just been an experiment. And if they really want to be K-pop stars, then they need to kind of
go through the system.
Address this stuff, and address these problems with how they're presenting themselves, instead of just being like, we're, because like when the guys are interviewed, they're clearly sincere and they love K-pop, but like, you can't just do whatever you want just because you're nice.
Yeah, but you can love something that doesn't necessarily give you the right to go in and muscle your way in.
Right, they're profiting from it, I think, which is the part where you start getting a bit kind of like, oh, what about everyone? It's like jumping the queue, basically.
Yeah, I will link the article, and it's a video documentary. It's interesting, and I think it's worth a watch, and you guys can kind of, but that's kind of the feelings that I came away with. Like there's no engagement with the anti-black racism that is kind of part of the K-pop industry in Korea and here.
Wow, we've spent ages on news.
We did, and you were like, "There's not much to talk about." Okay, should we move on to what we've been watching?
Let's do that.
So currently airing. So we start with Mr. Sunshine, since both of you are watching it.
I have to say I've committed to watching it.
You have? I watched the first 2 episodes because I wanted to be able to like give my thoughts. So, how many episodes have you watched?
I'm about 3.5 episodes in.
Okay.
But you can start and then I'll say what I want to say.
Okay, I think I actually kind of like it, surprisingly. I mean, well, not that surprisingly because the premise is so interesting. But then on the other hand, I was very doubtful about them being able to pull it off. But I actually feel like they've kind of pulled it off. Like I mean, it's not perfect, but it's like cinematic, like movie quality almost. Like the action is really like they were able to kind of give that feeling of scale, which I mean, clearly they spent so much money on it. You can see the money on the screen, but like I was like, really, how are they gonna be able to? And I more than even how much money that they were gonna spend on it, I was doubtful how a writer who's grown up in Korea and a writer like Kim Eun-seok, which maybe has some extra people on her writing team that are helping her with this, but like I was very doubtful that she'd be able to handle like the identity kind of issues of someone who left as a child and went to another country and then is coming back as an adult to, I don't know, as a representative of that other country's army. I don't know, like there's a lot of stuff there, but I think so far I'm intrigued and like it's a very interesting experience to watch a movie with this kind, I keep calling it a movie, to watch a drama with this kind of production value where the American army is like the imperial aggressor, especially a historical one. It's a very interesting experience. It's weird. It's kind of nice actually to see the opposite because I'm so used to watching war movies from like where like the script has been, okayed by the military and it's very jingoistic and we're the good guys, quote unquote but like it's really interesting to see and I appreciate that. I appreciate seeing it from that perspective because you just never get to see it.
I have one question before you guys keep talking about this because I haven't started watching it, but I'm very curious. Have they used any Western characters, like actors portraying any characters yet? Because that's always an interesting experience when.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
there's
they do. They
there's
have
a bunch
their
of white
stock
actors.
ones. The ones that
the
you
one
see on
who
all the
has
dramas.
the one who has the most major role is a guy who plays the former friend / villain in Descendants of the Sun. Like the guy who's with the guy from the American Army that's like formerly friends with Jun-ki, but he turns into the evil guy at the end.
Yeah.
So he's in there. His acting is not great, but I mean, it's.
I actually don't find him terrible.
He's not terrible, but he's not convincing either to me. But I mean, it's not a huge role. It's just like his token white friend who loves him back home from America. But I really liked I think for me, the most moving scene was when he's like a teenager in the U.S. And this is from the first episode, so like I don't think it's such a spoiler, but he's found himself in the U.S. for reasons, and he sees like he's faced a lot of like he's been getting beat up by like white people on the street, like by like gangs of boys that are just because he's different, and then he sees this row of I think it's just soldiers going off on their boat in their uniforms, and it's like a bunch of white people, and he sees a black soldier, and he's like, oh, and the guys, and then this like other kid who's trying to steal his money comes up, and he's like, what, did you find something? He's like, yeah. He's like, I don't see anything on you, and he's like, yeah, I found it, the way to become American. So that was very interesting to me, that was kind of why he joined the army. Like that's his motivation, is to use it to kind of escape the racism that he's been facing. That I found.
But that is so historically accurate, though. Do you know that? Have you guys known about this? That it was weird, but back when East Asian people and South Asian people were coming into the country, you couldn't become a citizen unless you were Caucasian, right?
Yeah.
So they kept changing the definition of the word Caucasian. So at one point, South Asian people were actually defined as Caucasian just because they were trying to make them citizens. But before that citizen thing came about, most people went into the military or became part of the local constabulary, I think.
Yeah.
And like they would become policemen even if they were not citizens. And that was one way of building trust in the community. That look, we are law-abiding people. We're trying to keep the law. And so, yeah, that's actually a really good way of becoming part of a country that you're
Yeah, so I mean, yeah, I'm impressed. Like, I wasn't expecting that level of nuance from this, so I'm impressed. I have two more things to say. One is that I really love the heroine so far. I think she's amazing. Like, she's such a badass. She's so interesting. The actor, I think her name is it
Kim Tae-ri.
Kim Tae-ri.
Kim Tae-ri.
She's awesome. Like, I haven't seen her in anything else, or if I have, I don't remember what I saw her in, but she's really, really good. I find her story so interesting. I really wish that somebody else was playing the main character, though. I'm not feeling Lee Byung-hun. Like, I mean, he's fine, but he just... Maybe it's just that he will always be creepy to me now. I'm not rooting for them together. Like, I think that the drama is pushing a romance between them, although I've only watched 2 episodes, so maybe not.
I think
That kind of skeeves me out because he's so much older than her, and you can actually see the age difference on screen, whereas that's not always the case with some of these big age gap romantic pairings. And the other thing is, like, this director is way too obsessed with these long, drawn-out moments where the two people are gazing at each other and nothing's happening. They're just staring at each other, and, like, there were a lot of those in Goblin, but I loved the actors so much more than I feel like I was feeling it, and the background music was so amazing. I was like, whatever, I'm going with it. But in this, the music is not doing it for me in the same way. So, but anyway, that's all my extremely long rambling. So I want to hear what you think.
Well, the first thing that I kind of figured out as I was watching is I can understand why Lee Byung-hun was cast in that role, because I think they did require quite a high level of English proficiency.
Steve Yeun, okay, 2 words, Steven Yeun. That's all I have.
I was just about to say, but there were definitely other people they could have chosen who had, whose English was good. But the other thing I also thought was that perhaps because it being a Netflix drama, because it was going to go out sort of on an international level, I think maybe they wanted a name that was going to be internationally recognizable. And those people
Steven Yeun has a more recognizable name.
Yeah, I'm trying to understand this casting
He's a better
decision
actor.
here.
He's nicer. He's more good looking. Because and he just did like 2 projects in Korea, so like South Korean people know him too. Like he's gotten really good at Korean, and
look, I'm trying to make myself come to terms with this casting. Don't now make me imagine what could have been with an actual face.
I'm sorry, I can't.
You.
I just watched Sorry to Bother You, and I'm like newly in love with him. He's so good.
So yeah, I mean, his character is really fascinating. Like you say, the nuance of his experience, because what I thought, and it keeps coming out, is that it does raise these really interesting questions of like allegiance, identity, and belonging, and that's really quite complex. And K-dramas don't often get to go there because they don't need to go there, because everything is happening in Korea with Koreans. So to have actually, to have these two different groups, rubbing shoulders, exchanging shots, it's really interesting. But yeah, Kim Tae-ri, totally blown away by her. I've never seen her in anything before either. She's amazing. She's like,
yes.
Usually I'm perfectly content with mediocre actors, and I won't notice, if they're glaringly bad, I'd notice. But if they're mediocre, I'd be like, yeah, I'm fine with that. I'm okay. But wow. She's amazing. She kind of reminds me a little bit of Park Bo-young in sort of the intensity and power of her characterization. It's like it doesn't take a lot for her to show you a lot. She can do that in like a short space of time. She can show you a lot.
Yeah, her eyes are very expressive,
and her voice is amazing.
Yeah.
But like you say, with the whole the money is dripping off the screen, but I feel like it's a little bit. How do you say it? Like, it's self-conscious, like it's trying very hard to create the same magic that you had in Goblin and Descendants of the Sun, but where in those 2 shows it worked with the moment, in this show it feels much more manufactured, like you're trying to create a moment that having the technical points of it is not enough if the sort of if there isn't an emotional center in it, if there isn't, if the chemistry itself doesn't. I'm not describing this right, but you know,
I know what you
like
mean.
there's
I
this
feel like
music, there's the crescendo, there's these long drawn out shots, and you're like not feeling it. I can see what you're trying to do here, but I'm not feeling it. Especially
it's the directing,
as
honestly,
yeah, and as you get
the
on,
director is.
the whole this romance that of course I just wish so much they weren't doing. I could stomach it so much better if there was no romance in this show, because it's really fascinating in every other aspect.
It doesn't
But I
need
kind of-
romance,
Yeah,
in my opinion.
I feel the bile rise a little bit when when they're trying to, like, there's this moment. It's that the iconic poster moment, the hand, the one that everyone's made hand lotion jokes about, where
Oh
he's
God, that was so corny. It was okay for like 10 seconds, and then they just kept going on and on and on, and I was like, oh my God.
And
My
it's
mom
like,
was like, when are they gonna?
Yeah.
She was like, how long are they gonna do this? How many angles are gonna show this from? I was watching with my mom and sister.
And the entire time you're like, no, it's not working. Can we, move on? But then, like, you get those sort of want to be romantic moments coming later as well, and you're just like, no. I'm watching it and going, no, please don't. Like, there's this one what's her Ishin, Kim Tae's character, she hears of the word love, right? She doesn't know what it means, so of course she's
in English. She hears it in English.
Yeah, that's right. Sorry. So of course she asks, what's his name? Oh God, I can't remember his character's name. What's his character's name?
Eugene.
Oh right, Eugene. So she asks him, tell me what love is, or tell me what is love. Will you do it with me? Just like, please don't put those words into that, like, child. Okay, she's not a child, but don't.
No.
It's really horrible. I was so like.
Also, in what world would you ask a man that you don't know and who is possibly your enemy, will you do this thing with me that I don't know what it is yet? But I'm gonna ask.
Because you're my comrade. And it's like, no, man, please. Because it's not the fact that the characters are saying it, it's the fact that, the scriptwriter and the director and everyone there, they are putting these words and creating this moment. And everyone is, outside of that scene itself, everyone knows what's happening. It's more yuck.
Yeah. And, like, honestly, if they were gonna go for, like, an older man, younger woman romance with, like, questionable moral underpinnings, like, I would much rather see her with, like, her teacher that teaches her how to, like, shoot guns.
Oh my God. Oh, do you know
her when she was a baby and, like, brought her back to her family and, like, knew her parents, and, like, the angst in that would be so good, and they have chemistry, and, like, the actor is so lovable, and he's like a bear, and he's like, don't trust anyone, don't even trust me. Like, I love their dynamic. I was like, oh my gosh.
Do you know who my alternate casting was? Ma Dong-seok. For Lee Byung-hun's character. It's like, his English is, he's lived in, like, LA for years. His English is totally fluent.
That would be so interesting and good.
How great would that have
been?
been?
On board with that.
Yeah, so that was my.
It's too pretty.
Yeah,
too young.
So my fantasy casting was, okay, if you really need someone who, has fluent English to take this role, and you want him to be older, fine, give me Ma Dong-seok. Because, you can't get better than that. Come on, man. Ma Dong-seok being, Police Unit 38P. What's his name? That's my name for everybody today. What's his name?
Yeah, I didn't watch that, so I don't know his character name, but he is such a teddy bear, and he's so charming, and he's the best. He has so much heart in everything. Like, you just instantly connect with him. Lee Byung-hun is very cold, and, like, I guess that works for this character, and it would work fine if they weren't trying to have a romantic relationship.
Yeah, I mean, it would work fine if it were any other actor, frankly. But I am watching it, so I guess that's that. Sorry to everyone who, why am I sorry? I knew I was going to watch it.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm going to continue. I'll have to make the decision.
There's enough else going on that I'm really interested in Ishin's story, and in Yoon-seok's story as well. So I'm carrying on, I guess.
Okay. I guess we'll hear an update next month then.
Okay. Do you guys want to talk about your house helper next? Anisa, you're watching that.
Sure, I'll just make it quick because I watched the first, 2 episodes, but they're half-an-hour episodes. I just wanted to kind of get an idea of what the setup is, and I really like, HouseHelper, he who looks good in a suit and a shirt. He's always in a role where he's like wearing a shirt or wearing a collared shirt or suit. But anyway, he's just this guy who clearly has some emotional baggage from his background, and he's left home. We don't know anything about him, but he's had some trauma, and now he just goes around and like cleans people's homes. But he's extremely he's like such a perfectionist that he doesn't clean people's homes unless they feel so precious about their home as if it's their child. And he's like extremely obsessive about the way he cleans homes. So he picks his customers. And the heroine is played by Bona, who was in The Best Hit and Girls' Generation 1979, which I really like her. Like, she's one of those idol actresses that at first I was like, oh, an idol actress, but she's so good. And she's actually, at first when I heard the synopsis, I was like, really? Like, how is she going to afford to hire this guy? But it's different than that. Like, she's struggling with money. I don't know how they're going to end up crossing paths, because right now she's, like, refusing to hire him, and she's struggling at work because she's an intern and nobody respects her, and she's struggling because she has a lot of debts, and I guess, like, the house that she doesn't want to let go of because it was her family's house, but she really can't afford to keep it, so now she's looking for someone to rent a room. So yeah, so we'll see. Basically, they're both at kind of a low point in their lives. It looks like one of those really heartwarming dramas about ordinary people in difficult circumstances where they kind of find healing. So I can go for that.
Could he end up being her, what do you call it, renter? Like, could he end up moving in or something?
He could, because apparently he's left home for a reason that we don't know. And he lives, I think, in his boss's house right now. And the boss was like, when is he going to go home? He needs to go now. It's been 5 years. So maybe that's what's going to end up happening.
So, yeah, I'm making a prediction here. I think that's what it's going
And so if it becomes a cohabitation drama, so much the better. Yeah. When do we ever say no to those? So yeah, so far I like the cast. It's a likable cast. The heroine is really relatable. There's a lot of other side storylines, which I don't know, but I think it's going to be one of those where there's just like a lot of stories and they kind of intertwine, and it's giving me a little bit of You Who Forgot Poetry vibes. Oh. So, except without the poetry, but it's kind of, it's in that same vein, just regular people with their small, maybe it's not a huge earth-shattering problem, but it is for them in that moment. So yeah, I like it.
Cool. So, 30 or 17.
Oh yeah, I'm so curious about this.
Yeah. We didn't have very good. Okay then. We didn't have much expectation of this, but when the trailers came out, all of us went, maybe we were like too quick to judge.
No, because this is from the writer of High School King, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, based on that alone, I was like, I'm watching this. And also Jang Se-jung, because I've really enjoyed the last couple of dramas that he did. So.
And for me, it's the actress.
Oh, and Shin Hye-sun, yeah. Actually, the pairing of them, she really is. So it was for that pair and for the writer. I figured it was worth checking out, even if it wasn't worth staying for. But I'm so staying for it. I love it so much. It's so good. That's all you're gonna get out of me. That's not true. I'm ready to carry on for the next 10 minutes.
So is the icky part that we were worried about, like, are they dealing with it well? That's basically what I want to know.
So the basic premise is, we know the basic premise is that Shin Hye-sun's character gets into a she has an accident when she's 17, and she's in a coma for 13 years, and she wakes up and she's 30 years old. We don't really know yet what Jang Se-jung's character has been doing in that 13 years, but he's a bit of a recluse, and he's very weird. Like, after you first meet him as this, sort of yeti, unshaven hermit type, stamping through the mountains, and so there's that. But then when he returns to civilization, he's very strange. So he's like taking out a tape measure. He's constantly taking out his tape measure and measuring things, and you're just watching that for the first half an hour, going, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" And it, like I say, it's very confusing. And then eventually you find out why he's doing that. But he doesn't seem to register other humans in the same way that normal humans do.
Interesting.
So kind of, I guess, sort of in terms of emotional development and just general sort of human development, who knows where he's at, but he seems to be stuck somewhere in his head most of the time. But also there's no push for romance right now, but also there is young Sejong, what was his name, Gong Woo-jin. So young Woo-jin, he had a crush on young Sori, who is Shin Hye-sun's character, but he doesn't know her name. And she's very absent-minded, so she was wearing her friend's jacket one day, and it had her friend's name on it, so he thought that was her name. And the accident that she was in, it was a really major accident, and the friend turned out to be one of the fatalities, and so he sees that name on the news, and he's like, for the various circumstances that led up to it, he felt that it was his fault. So all of this time he's been blaming himself for her death, not knowing that she's actually alive and has been in a coma, because as far as he knows, she's someone else. So when they cross paths again, there's no reason for him to think that think anything. She's just this weird lady who's turned up in his house, which used to be her house. Back when she was 17.
Interesting.
So there's just a lot of really weird characters which make it so fun. Like, so you've got Yejiwon, and she plays his housekeeper. But
I love her.
she's so weird. She's hilarious and brilliant.
Yejiwon is wonderful.
She's amazing.
She's wonderful. Yeah.
So, and the reason
I'm totally sold, by the way. Like, I'm definitely gonna watch this. You don't have to say anything else. I'm really excited.
But I have to tell you about my favorite character. My favorite character is his nephew. Yes. The reason that he's had to come back, I think, to Seoul, is that his sister needs him to look after her son, so his nephew, while she goes away on some kind of medical thingy. What is it called? When they go and do medical work abroad. So
like Doctors Without Borders type.
Something like that. So his nephew is the most hilarious and adorable giant puppy you'll ever see ever. He's just, I can't tell you any more about him because it's too good for me to tell you in advance. So just watch him and tell me if he doesn't become your favorite character within 3 seconds. He's so great.
Sounds good. Yes, I'm definitely, this was another one which I was like, I don't have time to watch 3 premieres in one day, because yesterday I was like, let me watch something else before we talk. But yeah,
it's it starts off like the backstory, the childhood part. It's quite tragic. I was wiping my eyes a couple of times. I didn't expect that. So it is really sad to start off with, but then, once she wakes up from her coma, there's that whole, because it's almost like being a time traveler, isn't it? Or like a body swap type of, so it has there's inherent comedy in it at this, sort of simultaneously alongside the tragedy. So you're kind of laughing and crying, laughing on the outside, crying on the inside. And though it's funny, it does kind of land emotionally as well. So
and she has the chops to pull something like that off.
Absolutely,
so good.
Because she's vulnerable at the same time as being completely weird. Of course, she's woken up in a 30-year-old woman's body. She doesn't even recognize her own face, but she brings that.
That was the freakiest thing.
It is. It really is. There's this moment when, because she's constantly surprised by her own face, and there's this moment when, lift doors open, and there's an old woman facing her, doing exactly the same gesture that she was doing, and then the doors slowly close, and she's like, "Oh my god, I thought that was me." So it was painful, but funny
Oh
but
God.
touching and
Yeah.
everything. It was really good. This isn't my new favorite show, behind the other one, which we'll talk
Yeah.
about afterwards.
Okay,
Okay.
you have two more on the currently airing list, Korean dramas, Life on Mars and Time, and Saya has been watching both of them while we have not.
Oh, okay. So the new shows, Time is the other new show that also aired this week. So this is my other. So 30 but 17 is my Monday Tuesday, and Time is my Wednesday Thursday. So I'm cracked up for Monday to Thursday, and then it's Life on Mars on Anyway, so Time is it's the new drama from the writer of Secret, so Churchill, and damn you and your addictive mellows, because this had me like
Is this
by
the one that we
episode.
said would sound horrible, except that it was by the writer of Secret,
Yes!
so that was the only reason that we might watch it? That
You
we
know,
talked about
check
last
it out, both of you. Check it out. It's I don't know if you guys caught the whole scandal, and I'm doing air quotes of Kim Jong Un. Was it Kim Jong Un? And the press conference where people were like, "Oh, why is he so rude?"
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So when you watch it, you get why he behaved in a stiff way at the press conference.
Yeah, his he had explained that he was so in character that he couldn't break out of it during the
Yeah,
press
his
conference.
character is so intense. Because so far I think we've only seen him doing quite cheerful and light-hearted characters. But this character is really heavy. And he's got quite a lot of anger, pent up violence, and there's a lot going on in his character. It's really actually very fascinating, and to see him handle all of the layers of that for such a young actor is actually pretty impressive. Gosh, what was the premise of this show? He's diagnosed with a terminal condition. He's got a couple of months to live. So everything kind of everything changes for him in that moment, because until then he's been this illegitimate son, or younger son of a chaebol. So he's got everything, but everything in terms of money and whatever he could want in material terms. But he's got an older brother who's constantly trying to take him down, and stepmother. Would you call her a stepmother? I guess. They're always belittling him and abusing him and mocking his dead mum and things like that. So that's what's always setting him off. So he crosses paths with So-hyun's character, and she's not bad either. She's pretty good. Who is... What is she? Oh, she works various part-time jobs and things. So, but the most...
Of course she does.
Yeah, and he has this encounter where he just treats people really badly, and he forces her, he tells her to kneel and apologize, and that
God.
becomes a big thing. But you can also see that he probably gets misunderstood quite a lot. He doesn't mean to be as bad as he ends up being. So I think this writer does have a little bit of a genius with creating these characters that are really horrible but redeemable. What happens is her sister dies and that's the cold open. Her sister dies in his pool, but then nobody knows how she died, and everything gets covered up. Even Kim Jong-un's character, he doesn't know how she died, so it's all a mystery to him as well. But the really interesting character here is So-hyun's boyfriend, who is basically the Bae-subin character.
I was gonna say,
Yeah.
it's gonna be another case of somebody
Yeah.
following somebody else and being like, "You killed this person that was really important to me, and I'm gonna get revenge on you."
Well, the
forever."
thing is, you're watching the first few episodes, and you're like, I don't understand your game. What are you trying to do? Because everything he's doing is hurting his girlfriend. And then at some point you're like, okay, so you're actually trying to take down Kim Jong-un, right? But it's really interesting. I don't want to give too much of it away because I want you guys to watch it, and I think you guys will enjoy it. Well, not enjoy, but it's twisty and dark and not that dark.
Break our hearts over it.
Yeah, And like, Kim Jong-un's character's sort of journey to redemption begins pretty much immediately, which I guess a terminal diagnosis will do to you. But it's
I don't know if I have the emotional fortitude for something like this right now, but then again, it's a secret writer, so maybe it might be worth it.
It might be easier to sort of meet it out slowly, week by week, rather than binging it.
Or I'll just go into it with the mantra of love is pain. So
Yeah.
just be ready.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
Okay.
Oh, so next is Life on Mars. Okay,
Yeah.
Life on Mars. I have mixed feelings about this. One, because it's got a lot of hype among the K-drama fandom in general, and some people are even saying this is better than Signal, which, for me, if I hear that line, I'll be like, okay, I'm watching this right now. It's like, it is good, but there's a lot of things I have a problem with, which personally bother me, things like police violence and police violence, and that is basically all of it. And it makes it a really hard watch for me. But also because as I'm watching it, I feel nostalgia for Tunnel, which I really loved. And I watch it and I keep thinking, oh, I wish this was Tunnel. I wish this was Tunnel the entire time. So it's probably a bit unfair of me on the drama. The drama itself is really good. It's very tightly plotted. There's still 2 weeks to go. I think I started it too early. I should have waited another 3 weeks before I started it. Because I binged 12 episodes. Not binged, but watched over a week. 12 episodes. Not 12. 10. 9. 8. 8. So I guess I picked it up halfway through the run. So you've got a police officer played by a actually he's a forensic investigator or forensic scientist, which confuses me a little bit because he seems to do all the sort of field work that a normal sort of violent crimes division detective would do, but he's actually a scientist who works in the lab. Why does he have so many skills? I don't think it works that way. So it kind of bothers me all the time. It's like it bothers me all the time. But yeah, so he gets killed or something. This is all part of the mystery. No one knows what happened to him. So he's shot and run over by a car, and then he wakes up and he's in 1988 in his own body, with his own name. But there's things to suggest that you don't quite know, because he is this happening in his head? Is it for real? The TV talks to him. He gets weird phone calls, and there's this case that is linked to the case that he was investigating in his present. I have a problem with the whole police thing.
I sympathize with your reservations. I haven't started watching Life on Mars, but I remember when is it Live or Live?
Oh
was
yeah,
airing.
Yeah.
A lot of people were saying that it was really good. Live.
I think it was Live, wasn't it? Was it Live?
I don't
okay, do you know?
know. I don't know because I've never actually. Yeah, I didn't see any of the
because it was
trailers or anything.
I'll check for you.
Okay, but I just it's very much the whole premise is how tough it is to be a police officer, and you do your best, and you don't know. And I'm like, okay, I really love Lee Kwang-soo, but I don't know if I'm in the emotional place right now to watch a movie about how tough it is to be a police officer and how we should feel for them right now.
Especially if you think about it being the 80s, where there was much less regulation, and it was all part of a day's work to beat up your suspect. And it's just the level of violence. I'm not saying that any violence would be okay, but it was pretty brutal. And it does
Don't you think that it might be making a commentary about
the thing
how
is,
bad that was? Or is it just kind of this is just how it is and you just deal with it?
At first I thought maybe they were making a comment on it. But then they had this part, last week, where the character, what's her name? Is it Go-sung? Yeah, so Go-sung. So Go-sung's character is really great because she's a female police officer, and in the beginning, basically she's treated as the team grunt. You know, she does their laundry, makes their tea. And then you have Jung Kyung-ho, who comes in, and he it's not that he treats her better, it's that he treats her like a police officer immediately without making a thing about it. He just gets her to do jobs, they work together. So it's like he gives her this recognition as a colleague and fellow police officer, and like she really blossoms under that, not in the sense that he's made it happen, but in the sense that her work, she takes pride in her work because she gets actual work. Whereas she wasn't getting that before. But she's a really great common sense character, and they call her Miss Yoon. Her character's name is Yoon Na-young, and she's quite soft spoken, but she's very. I guess you could say she's the precursor to the modern profiler. She's got a psychology background, and she works stuff out, and she gets a lot further in her investigations using a kind of a more intellectual and legworky approach than the others, and the others kind of just do it with violence, because violence is always the answer. So but she's also, there's this one character who's played by Oh Dae-hwan, who's always basically low-level sexual harassment all the time. It is, and okay, fine, that's what the time was like, and it's still like that now, fine, I get you. But it's just, it doesn't get called out enough. You can see it, but it's not often called out. And I get that she wouldn't have been in a situation to be able to call it out, but she defends him later, when he's thought to be a suspect for something. She says, well, he's actually a good guy. But all of the stuff that he'd been doing was not acceptable. Like, you don't want them to say he's good after all of that, when the thing that he'd been doing actually was bad. I get wanting to protect your
rather than
colleague.
saying I don't like him, but I don't think he did this. You're saying he's a good guy.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's a writing choice that they're clearly making. Yeah.
So like, I don't feel they're trying to call that out. So the problem remains. There's one more show I sampled this week, which I actually do want to talk about, if that's okay. It's not on our list.
Yeah, sure.
So
You're clearly winning at this watching things.
Oh, I don't know why. I can only hang my head in shame. I do
No,
other
it's
things.
awesome. I wish that I could also do that.
Just so everyone knows, I do work a full-time job. I don't know where the time to watch drama comes from. Oh, it's because I don't sleep. That's where it comes from.
I was going to say, do you sleep, woman?
So I also sampled the new Yoon drama, Your Honor, also called Dear Judge. You guys remember we talked about Sirius a while back? So again, similar type of premise, identical twin brothers, one actor playing both roles, same pay. They always get asked about that on interviews and stuff. So, do you get paid double for playing two roles? And then the actors are always laughing like, nope, same pay.
Oh.
And so you've got one brother who is the studious, high achieving brother who becomes a judge, and the other brother who gets into fights all the time, who's also the mum favors the older brother, so she's always kind of, if the brothers are fighting, Hyung will get hit like 5 times, and a younger brother will get hit like 10 times. And it's like, why do you do that? You watch these parents and you think, you created the delinquent that they become. Why couldn't you just treat them nicely? And it's also because it's the mum from Secretary Kim as well, so she's the twins' mum too, which is kind of mental shift that you have to make quick. Yeah, that's right.
Oh, that actress scares me.
She was in 2 weeks, right?
She has this tendency to get shrieky in like this really scary way.
Yeah.
She does it in almost every role.
Yeah, I didn't like her. But so basically something happens to the older brother and he's kidnapped, and the younger brother, I can't remember any of the characters' names right now. I'm trying to remember. I don't remember.
It's okay.
So the younger brother lets him somehow manages to let himself into his brother's house, and where he's chased by police. And then, like in a moment, he assumes his brother's identity, and that's that. And then he ends up being dragged around in his brother's life. So he has to act like he has to be a judge. He has no idea what's going on. He has a completely different personality, and he's just like trying to just convince people that he's that he's not a fake. And because they look exactly the same, nobody knows the difference. They just think he's being weird.
So how's he doing with the law part of it?
Well, it's really funny because usually, in the other dramas, like in Switch and stuff, they just coincidentally have they've passed the bar and stuff. He hasn't. Yeah. And he can't even read Hanja, so he's looking at all of the stuff his brother's written, and he's like, I can't read it. Oh my god, why is it all Hanja? Why is it all Chinese characters? And and he Lee Young is the female lead in this, and I really like her. From Tunnel, the little robot girl. Oh gosh, what was her name in Tunnel? I can't remember anybody's names. But yeah, Lee Young, a completely different character here. And it's also really nasty that, why do we have to keep seeing this? I mean, I know it's real, but I hate it. She's, again, sexual harassment in the workplace, and nasty superiors, and all of the... And there's this one guy who touches her ear all the time, and she tries to report it, and the guy she reports it to is like, nothing... so what's wrong with that? That's a compliment if he asked you to sleep with him. And... you're just like watching it and like throwing up in your mouth all the way through. It's nasty. Anyway, I hope.
But tell me something. I find this interesting that they've been showing more and more of these incidental harassment subplots in more and more dramas, even though there aren't in most cases there are like no good results to complaining, but most of these female characters do. I mean, like from the perspective of the female characters, this is harassment. Like previously, when things like this used to happen, it would be like the good old boy type situation where even the women didn't take it very seriously. Yeah. But at least in these harassment situations, they're showing the women being actually bothered, and I think that's one step closer to progress, if you will, because perspective matters. So do you think is that true for this one as well?
I think that's a really valid point, actually. But I guess in the moment of watching it, what you get most is, what I feel the most is really sort of disgust that the actress themselves have to, in their role, that they have to experience this, because it looks exactly the same. It feels exactly the same, I'm sure. Even if you're surrounded by cameras and whatever, it's still horrible. I just, do you remember when we were talking about Pretty Nuna and about how they kept replaying that clip? And that every time they replayed it, like it didn't get better. You didn't feel less disgusting the next time. Every single time they played it, it was horrible.
Yeah, like that's a really valid point, Paroma. And also, now I'm to the point where I feel like I don't really want to see that unless they're going to address it properly in the story and it has a point and that it's saying something, I guess. Otherwise, it's just gratuitously putting it out there when there's also already so much of it out there in life and like that in what women experience.
But there are so many women out there who don't see this as harassment, but if the character on screen repeatedly tells them that this is harassment, even though it's not being addressed by their superior, that's good. That's how opinions change, because the culture around you that you're seeing on television, it's telling you that this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, and repeatedly, even though we are oversaturated by this stuff because we already know, we read enough, we are aware enough. For us, this might seem gratuitous, but for a lot of their audience, this stuff is new. They didn't realize that this was harassment. So I'm actually pro.
I am hoping.
Whatever they think.
I am hoping it will be addressed, and it does look like it will be, because there was this one point where Yoon-soon's character notices it, and the characters haven't officially met yet, but I feel like it will come back, and I hope that they're being set up to be taken down. And also, there was one more thing I was going to say. I can't remember right now. I was going to say something. What was it? I don't know.
I think actually one of the dramas where I actually was pretty happy with how they addressed this, and this was actually all before Me Too and stuff. Did you guys watch 20 again?
Yes.
Do you remember there was this
So, oh
one
my God, I love that one.
professor, or I don't know if it was a professor or somebody. I think it was a professor, but it was basically like he was being really inappropriate with his like freshman students, like the first year girls in his seminars or whatever, and they would like take the students out drinking, and then he would like inappropriately touch this, and they were like so young, they were only like 17 or 18 or like 20 in Korean age, and they were too afraid to report him because he was like really famous and he had it. And then Cheju is like an ajumma, and she's like not here for this garbage. She basically like convinces them to expose him, and like there's one girl who has like a video clip and she exposes him, and he actually ends up getting fired or resigning. And I just really liked how they dealt with that whole situation, because there was a lot of like some people didn't want to report it, and then the girls were like, we don't know if we feel comfortable. Like it wasn't black and white, but they still were able to do something and to show him to be the creep that he was, and to show him getting his comeuppance, which I feel like is something we deserve to see.
Yeah.
Is to get these creeps, see these creeps actually getting their comeuppance, you know?
And it's just, I still feel so burned by Pretty Nuna that it's,
Yeah. That's true too.
Yeah. I want to scrub that drama off my brain, and I never thought that's where.
Now I remembered what I wanted to say. You're gonna laugh. So Young, whenever he touches her, she has to go and like scrub herself off. Like when he comes into the women's bathroom, right? And she thinks. Like she's like, oh no, I didn't realize this was the men's bathroom. I thought it was the women's. And she's like, it is the women's bathroom. And then he goes, do you see me as a man? It was disgusting. And like he holds her ear and he slides his finger down it. Like it's really it's just.
But
I've
the
never
fact that
seen
they.
before.
Yeah, it's the fact they're showing her being so grossed out and like having to like wash off afterwards.
Yeah.
It's very different than like that drama, which we're not going to mention anymore, where the person's just like, oh well, this is just happening to me. I'm gonna smile and put up with it because that's just how life is, and it's different. So yeah, I'm hopeful that like what you're saying, Paroma, about maybe it'll change some minds. I hope so.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Hopefully you enjoyed that extra long news segment. It took on a life of its own. This is the end of part 1 of this yak. Stay tuned for part 2, dropping shortly, in which we'll talk about more stuff we've watched, including our final thoughts on a drama that we were very excited about last month, as well as August K-drama premieres. Thanks for listening, and see you on the other side.